Now, I know that Game Week 14 has only just started, but with such a short turnaround to 15, there's already quite a lot to talk about. And in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 15. So I'm going to start off this video as I do with most in the buy and avoid video series by going through the clean sheet odds according to 11FI. I'll leave a link to 11FI in the description so you can see this for yourself. But essentially, they produce this model every week for projected clean sheets over the next sort of 5-6 game weeks. You can see here, Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool are the top 3 teams. I've made countless videos talking about how good the Arsenal defence is. I will never deny that they're not good. I don't even think it's worth putting a segment in about them anymore because they're a known entity again, right? So yeah, Arsenal defence are good. Say no more. Man City, yes, their projections are good, but I think quite a lot of the projections that we're seeing is purely based on the fact that historically they have been so good. I mean, for the last couple of months, they've looked absolutely all over the place. And for me, maybe Guardiola was the only one I'd consider just with his attacking threat. But I'd only pick Guardiola for how good he is from an attacking perspective, rather than how many clean sheets I back him to keep. Liverpool, this season in isolation, have probably been the best defence in the league. And I think one interesting thing to say about Liverpool is with the Konate injury, who nails down that other centre-back spot? It certainly looks like Joe Gomez is going to be first choice there, but I don't think he has all that good of an injury record, so I don't necessarily think he's going to play every game. And for me, you'll see this come out with some of the players I'm about to recommend. Over this really congested, busy Christmas period, one key theme I'm going to try and bring out in lots of players I recommend is players that I would expect, unless they get injured. Any player can get injured, right? But I want to pick players or recommend players that are going to start every game and play 90 minutes. And I think for Liverpool, Van Dijk is the only defender really you can guarantee is going to play every game for 90 minutes. And I must say, he's looking back to his absolute best in recent games. And more than that, he's offering quite a lot of goal threat from corners as well. I think every game I see him play for Liverpool, he gets on the end of at least 1 or 2 corners during games where he has a real chance of scoring. So I actually really like him as a defensive option for Liverpool. Usually I would recommend Trent, but just with him coming back from injury, Slot himself has said that Trent is going to be managed through this period and not necessarily play 90 in every game. Although you could turn that around and say Trent not playing 90 could actually mean he locks in clean sheets more quickly. So yeah, there's a couple of narratives there, I guess. But for me, Van Dijk and Trent would be the 2 Liverpool defenders I'd target. And then interestingly, we got Chelsea. So outside of the 3, main teams you'd expect to be top, we've got Chelsea. And there are a couple of players from Chelsea that I really like the look of. And just going back to the theme of those players that are nailed on to start every game and play 90 minutes, I think Colwill is going to be one of those players. Certainly looks like he's Enzo's favourite centre-back. Well, it's him and Fofana that seems to be Enzo's first choice too. But Enzo is so... Oh, sorry. I was going to say Enzo then. Fofana is so injury-prone that, you can't say he's nailed on to play every game just because he's so injury-prone. But Colwill is not. And they've got Tottenham in 15, right? I'm conscious I'm recommending Chelsea players ahead of playing Tottenham, which is obviously a tough fixture. But after that Tottenham game, they've got a really sweet run of 6 fixtures where I genuinely think Chelsea have a reasonable chance of keeping a clean sheet. Brentford, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth. I think that's a really nice run of fixtures. Now, Colwill isn't jazzy, he's not exciting. He's not really put up all that much goal threat at all, to be honest, this season so far. He's had 3 shots, 1 shot on target in 13 games, right? But Chelsea have kept 3 clean sheets, and I think the more time they're spending under Enzo, the better and better they're getting. And I think both from an attacking perspective and from a defensive perspective. And I think the clean sheets are going to come. And yeah, just looking, maybe obviously Tottenham away is a tough one. But after that, they're looking, I think, really good for chances of clean sheets. And on the same token, looking at Chelsea, Rob Sanchez, their goalkeeper, I think is also looking excellent. You can't see it here, but he's averaging 3.75 saves per 90. So, yeah, it's a really good number. It's essentially getting saves bonus points every game. I'm going to bore my viewers to death mentioning this all the time. But my favourite goalkeepers have a combination of clean sheets and saves rather than just lots of clean sheets or lots of saves, right? And I think Rob Sanchez, over this run of, 7 fixtures I've got here, has a good chance of getting a decent amount of both. So yeah, Colwill and Sanchez I really like the look of. The only slight point of doubt I guess you have about Sanchez, obviously he's about to play Tottenham, but I do think he's prone to the odd mistake, which could lead to him potentially being dropped in future fixtures. However, Enzo has been pretty hard on defending him in press conferences, suggesting he's the first choice keeper for Chelsea. So much so that I've bought him. So he's in my team for Gameweek 14 onwards now. So yeah, I do think, he's definitely got a mistake in him. But given everything Enzo has said, I think his place in the team is fairly secure. And I look at another defender as well. So outside of Chelsea, I mentioned that one of the most important factors of players I want to talk about in this video is the fact they're nailed on and play 90 minutes every game. And I think Lewis Dunk is a player that will do that. He did miss out in game week 13. Igor played in his place. It's been Igor and Van Heck, the two centre-backs for Brighton. And the manager said that he's been really impressed with Igor and didn't really have a reason to take him out of the team. So take this recommendation with a bit of a pinch of salt. And I'd definitely wait and just see if Lewis Dunk starts in 14. If he doesn't start in 14, then he is probably a bit too risky. But if he does, I suggest he likely keeps his place in the team. He is, one of the single most nailed outfield players in the Premier League, I would say. The Brighton club captain, starts every game. He's not injury prone, but he does pick up the odd injury here and there. So he doesn't have a perfect 38 games a season, 90-minute record. But he is someone that when he's fit, he starts every game and plays 90 minutes. And I think he's got a bit more goal threat than is suggested by his stats. And I look at the fixtures that Brighton have got coming up. Leicester, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Brentford, and then Villa away is quite tough after that. But that's a decent run of 3 or 4 fixtures there he's got. And I just think, again, going back to that sort of busy, festive period narrative of just wanting players that play every game and play 90 minutes. As long as we see a start, I think, from Dunk in 14, he should tick that box quite nicely. I just wanted to mention it again if I haven't said it enough already in my videos. I picked Rob Sanchez there because I think over the short term, he's probably the best goalkeeper in the game. Again, thinking back to combination of saves and clean sheets. But if I make that a season-long pick as to who I think will be the best goalkeepers for the whole season, I put that down to Pickford and Onana. I really do. I think these two are going to end up the 2 top-scoring keepers in the game. And I say no more. Combination of saves and clean sheets rather than just one or the other. That's what's going to propel these guys to be the top keepers in the game. So, like I said, I mentioned Sanchez there. I think for the run of 6 to 7 fixtures he's got coming up, he is probably the best goalkeeper in the game, or at least in my mind is the best keeper in the game. But season long, if you just want to set and forget a keeper, which to be honest, most people should do, I've gone for Sanchez there because the second wildcard window opens soon. If you just go back to Sanchez, actually, opens in game week 19. So you could potentially, have Sanchez for that short run and then completely change your team on a wildcard and get one of these guys in, something like that. That was kind of my theory for putting them in. But yeah, mentioned Sanchez there, but season long, who I believe will be the 2 best keepers, look no further than Onana and Pickford. Okay, next up, I wanted to look at things more from an attacking perspective. Looking at the projected goals, I see this list every week I put this list in every week on this video, right? Or this video series I make. And ultimately, the clean sheet odds do kind of pull out some surprises from time to time, but the projected goals, we largely see the list the same, regardless of like fixture swings or fixture runs. It may be just the odd change here or there. But by and large, the top teams in the league that you would imagine would come towards the top of the projected goals do that. So we've got Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, the standard sort of top 6, bar Man United, who are down in 11th. To be honest, for most of the season, they've been mid-table in terms of projected goals. And actually, they've got quite a nice run coming up, and they're still mid-table. So yeah, I don't think there are any massive surprises here. The only team, I don't think really punching above their weight as such, but towards the top of the mid-table teams is Bournemouth. They've got quite a nice run from match day 15 onwards, or game week 15 onwards, so maybe dipping a little bit into the Bournemouth attack could be a way to go. I always think this, comparably really, the 2 best cheap midfielders, like proper bargain basement midfielders in the game, would be Rodgers and Semenyo. And over these games, you can see in terms of projected goals, Villa beat them in game week 15, but beyond that, it looks like Bournemouth kind of have their number for future game weeks, or will sort of do for the next 3. So basically, I would say, in my opinion, I think Semenyo is better than Rodgers, is what I wanted to pull out of that, basically. Considering the form and the kind of dip in form that Villa have gone through recently as well, I'd certainly come to that conclusion in recent weeks. if things might play out differently in game week 14, right, and Aston Villa absolutely smashed Brentford, and then our opinions change. But I don't think it's going to be a massive short-term fix that Unai Emery can do, and it will be a period of 3 or 4 weeks where Villa see a bit of a drop-off in form. So, yeah, maybe if you're on Rodgers, like me, be a little bit worried about owning him and potentially considering going for Semenyo, who you can see here has good fixtures. And also, it's not just Semenyo I think is a good option. There are very good Brighton midfielders. I'm looking at Matoma. And actually Jarrod Bowen for West Ham, who I mentioned a little bit later on, although take that with a pinch of salt because I've recorded this video while that game is literally going on at the moment, because I'll be up too late making videos basically if I didn't take the chance. So there'll be a segment about Bowen if he's still worth buying after this video, and I'll edit it out if he's not. I thought it would also be worth looking at, just in general, a predicted points model. What I've pulled out here is the top players for expected points, regardless of position, regardless of price, over the next 5 game weeks. And what we're seeing here is no real surprise, to be honest. The top, 6 are Salah, Haaland, Palmer, Saka, Isak. The interesting thing I wanted to pull out here, the one thing I wanted to discuss here really is captaincy for next week. I know it's really close. You can see there 6.8 for Palmer, 7.1 for Haaland, and 7.3 expected points for Salah, right? But I've thought about next week's captaincy as a Haaland owner, and I actually think that Haaland is the best captain for game week 14. Oh, sorry, game week 15. So easy to get confused with the game weeks. Reason for saying that, right, is Salah is playing the Merseyside derby at 12:30 on Saturday. So it's an early kickoff. We all know the Gandhi quote around early kickoffs, right? And I do think it's not just a meme, right? I do think there is a general change in energy when teams kick off at 12:30 compared to when they kick off at 3. I don't know if any of you guys have been to an early kickoff Premier League or like Championship level game. I've been to a few in the Championship, and there does just generally feel a bit of a drop off in atmosphere. You know, fans haven't had as much time in the pub before games, so they're not quite as rowdy. The energy is just lower, but I do think that contributes to a game that has less goals in it. And this Merseyside derby, Everton, despite being really woeful from attack, have not been too bad defensively this season. And you know how they're going to attempt to play that game, right? They're going to really be dogged at the back and try and hold Liverpool to try and concede as few goals as possible. And it's the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. And I just have a feeling that game is going to have a real bit of needle to it and be quite cagey, certainly from an Everton perspective. It's going to be quite hard for Liverpool and Salah to score goals, in my opinion. Haaland has got Crystal Palace away. Now, providing he gets through game week 14 unscathed and isn't injured and is ready to go for 15, I think that game has more goals in it for City than the Merseyside derby does for Liverpool. Obviously, Palmer has Tottenham away. That's another genuine captaincy shout. And likewise, Salah is a decent captaincy shout as well, right? Oh, Saka, sorry, is a decent captaincy shout as well, right? But I just wanted to put the point across around Haaland potentially being the best captain for game week 15. Maybe just because I need a little slither of hope that there's still a reason to keep him in your team. But, I mean, ultimately, if you don't have Haaland, it's not like there aren't captaincy alternatives to him, right? And the expected points, actually, for game week 16 are higher for Haaland, but it's only 0.1 points, so it doesn't really mean anything. But I guess what this metric is telling you, and it's been the case, you know, the whole time, basically, since Haaland became sellable, I would say, in the game, is that ultimately the combination of Salah, Palmer and Saka is probably better than having two, because it's really hard to fit them all in, right? I would say this combination of Salah, Palmer and Saka on paper, plus more expensive players to improve the rest of your team, is better than having Haaland, Salah and one other and cheaper players in your team. I think that's the general narrative, and it continues in terms of looking at this expected point. But what I did think was interesting is potential captaincies, and I do think Haaland is a shout for 15 or 16. That felt a bit rambly, but hopefully it made sense. Again, I'm taking a little bit of a risk here by talking about this ahead of Eze's game finishing in game week 14, so anything could happen, and he's prone to the odd hamstring injury, which is, I guess, a downside to him. I do think he could be a good option for the next 5 game weeks. Gone down to 7.7% ownership, and I'd actually say his ownership amongst engaged managers is actually probably, it's going to be 0, isn't it? No one's going to have Eze in their team now who's engaged and has a chance of finishing well in FPL. That 7.7% ownership is going to entirely be players that have given up on the game, basically. In fact, seeing Eze's ownership there is kind of a good marker to see how many people have dropped the game, right? Like 7.7% or whatever. It's probably more than that. But he is actually the top midfielder, or top cheap midfielder. I did a filter under 7 million for the next 5 game weeks, according to the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points. And next up, we've got Semenyo. And the reason I wanted to talk about Semenyo is because, like I said before, I'm having a little bit of doubt around Rodgers and Aston Villa. And I think Semenyo is a fine replacement for Rodgers. And, well, pre his yellow card ban, he had taken the second most shots in the Premier League of all players. So that just shows how dangerous he's been from an attacking perspective. A couple of other players as well. Kulusevski, I'm going to talk about Brennan Johnson in a second. Trossard, although I'm not sure you can really guarantee any Arsenal player to start every game. I mentioned Mitoma. He was seen hobbling at the end of the Southampton game in game week 13, so he hasn't played in 15 yet, so we don't know if he's fully fit, but there is maybe a little niggling injury he's got going on. And one player that I don't know if other content creators have spoken about him yet, but Buonanotte looks pretty good at 5 million as well. Leicester have, look at that, reasonable fixture run coming up. And at 5 million, to be fair, you could just have him on your bench. And actually, that might not be a bad thing, because again, we talk about this busy festive period. I just have a feeling that even the nailed on 90-minute players you'd consider to be at that level might not necessarily play all the games either. And just having a player like this in your back pocket who's got really good projected points and also put up some really good numbers this season is a good idea, because he can just always be there to replace the man that gets a surprise benching or left out of the squad or whatever. So it is good to have some bench cover. Potentially someone like Buonanotte could provide that. Now, for many people, I think it could well be a last chance saloon for Mbeumo in their teams. This fixture against Aston Villa he's about to play in game week 14 I think is pretty pivotal, certainly for me. And if he continues to adopt that kind of wide right position where he's not taking any shots or looking dangerous at all, I think he could well be on the chopping block. Yes, the numbers he's put up this season so far are really good, but that was up until kind of Wissa's return to the team and he was shoved out on the right wing. Yes, he's on penalties. Yes, he's playing 90 minutes every game. Yes, he's, all that stuff. But he's not. I think in the last 4 games, he took 1 shot, and that 1 shot had less than 0.1 XG behind it. So he's put up 0.09 XG in his last 4 games. Obviously, the Aston Villa fixture. I'm recording this before he's played that game. So it really is a last chance saloon for him. And we've spoken before. We looked at the cheap midfielders in the game. Eze's a potential option. Semenyo's a potential option as well. Mitoma, Buonanotte. Plenty of replacements there as well. And he's literally playing at the time that I'm recording this video, so I haven't been able to update the stats. I'll edit it out, actually, if he gets injured, but I don't think he will. I think Jarrod Bowen is a really shrewd replacement for Mbeumo. Thinking back again to those nailed-on players that play 90 minutes every game and have great injury records, Jarrod Bowen is one of those players. He plays every minute of every game for West Ham in the Premier League, regardless of manager, right? And I think the one risk that there is around West Ham players is their manager. They haven't been playing all that well. And the manager's kind of very close to being on the chopping block. But I think regardless of the manager that's in charge, they're going to play Jarrod Bowen for 90 minutes every game, even if Lopetegui gets sacked, right? And the fixtures that Bowen has coming up look really, really good. Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton, even that game against Liverpool, right? I do not see a world where Bowen couldn't score in that game, because he is really good against the big teams. And one thing I would say about him as well is you look at his stats and he's slightly outperforming that XG. He's got 3 goals from 2.25 XG, right? But Jarrod Bowen is a player. There are 2 players in the Premier League, right, that historically over 3 or 4 seasons outperform their expected goals. One of them is Heung-min Son, and the other one is Jarrod Bowen, because they are 2 of the best finishers in world football. That might be quite a strong statement in your mind for me talking about Jarrod Bowen. But yeah, he genuinely is one of the best finishers in world football. And yeah, with that set of fixtures coming up, provided he gets through 14 unscathed, playing 90 minutes every game, and with no Paquetá on the pitch, he could potentially be on penalties as well. Although I think Paquetá was just benched for 14, probably back for 15. So I wouldn't get too carried away about penalties. But yeah, I think with those fixtures coming up, he's a nice option. I guess this guy is a bit of a left field shout for a Mbeumo replacement, but Brennan Johnson has been putting up some really strong numbers this season. He's got 8 attacking returns from 13 appearances. And you can see there, 6.77 XG. So he's actually put up more XG than goals he's actually scored. So, you know, stats suggest he could be on something like 7 goals rather than, well, it's 1 goal difference, but you can see there's a slight underperformance there. And with the fixtures he's got coming up, probably bar that Liverpool one, I think there's a chance that he could do well in all of them. Like, I would not foresee a world where Spurs and Johnson couldn't get involved in the goals against pretty much all of those teams. And I'd actually say Spurs have been such a strong attack in the league so far this season in terms of scoring goals. I wouldn't rule them out being able to score against Liverpool either. I guess the one downside that Johnson carries is just his potential minutes. Spurs have obviously quite a lot of midfielders that can play across that line that Ange likes to play. So there is very much a chance that a benching could come for Brennan Johnson at some point. But I actually have a feeling that benching could well come in game week 14. So if he gets benched in 14, I think you can be pretty confident to say he's going to start in 15, 16 and beyond. So yeah, I really like him as an option. He's also a bit cheaper than Mbeumo. So if you downgrade Mbeumo to Johnson, you actually free up a bit of cash to upgrade places elsewhere. Another reason I like Brennan Johnson is because I saw Ben Crellin, who I think now has become the #1 FPL manager in terms of average rank over the last like 5 or 6 seasons. He's got Brennan Johnson in his team and is already in the top, I think he's in the top 50k now, something ridiculous. And I would suggest that him having Brennan Johnson in his team has really helped propel him to that rank, because he's under 10% ownership. That's a bit of a differential. Yeah, I think he's a really nice option if you're looking to replace Mbeumo. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. I know I've put some players in there that haven't played, or will have played when this video ends, but haven't played when this video is being recorded. But considering the games all finish at 10:15 UK time and I have a full-time job to go to tomorrow, I thought I'd take the risk and get the video out while the games were going on, because I'm going to take the risk that Bowen doesn't get injured, basically. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of those suggestions there. And if you have any other players you'd suggest could replace Bryan Mbeumo as well, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. And if you haven't already enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.